Pablo Escobar. As the leader of the Medellin cartel, Escobar controlled around 80% of the global cocaine market at his peak. He smuggled approximately 15 tons of cocaine into the US per day, earning an estimated $420 million a week. Escobar was known for his plata o plomo, silver or lead policy, offering government officials and police the choice between bribery or death. His cartel was responsible for bombings, murders of police officers, and even the assassination of a Colombian presidential candidate. Escobar's brutal tactics led to the deaths of thousands, and despite his attempts to portray himself as a Robin Hood figure by building hospitals, schools, and housing, he left Colombia in a state of violence and chaos. Al Capone. During the Prohibition era, Capone gained control of Chicago's underworld by smuggling alcohol, running illegal gambling operations, and maintaining a network of brothels. He became a national celebrity, with the press glamorizing his criminal exploits. Capone's gang was responsible for this notorious 1929 massacre, where 7 members of a rival gang were gunned down. This solidified his reputation for brutality. Despite his criminal empire, Capone was convicted in 1931 for tax evasion, receiving an 11-year sentence. His health deteriorated in prison, and he died from complications of syphilis in 1947. Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán. As the head of the Sinaloa cartel, Guzmán was involved in trafficking large amounts of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and marijuana across borders, particularly into the US. His cartel became one of the most dominant and wealthiest in Mexico. El Chapo famously escaped from maximum security prisons twice, once in 2001 by hiding in a laundry cart, and again in 2015 through an elaborate tunnel system. His ability to evade authorities made him a legend in the criminal world. In 2016, Guzmán was finally recaptured. He was extradited to the US and sentenced to life in prison in 2019 for drug trafficking, conspiracy, and money laundering. Ted Bundy confessed to murdering over 30 women between 1974 and 1978 across multiple states, but the true number of victims may be much higher. He used his good looks and charm to gain the trust of his victims, often posing as an injured man needing help. Bundy escaped from custody twice, once by jumping out of a courthouse window and another by sawing a hole in his jail cell's ceiling. During his second escape, he committed more murders, including the brutal attacks on sorority sisters in Florida. Bundy was sentenced to death and executed in the electric chair in 1989. His case remains one of the most infamous in American history due to the shocking nature of his crimes and his deceptive persona. Charles Manson founded a commune in California in the 1960s, convincing his followers, mostly young women, that he was a messianic figure. He preached an apocalyptic race war and dubbed it Helter Skelter after a Beatles song. In 1969, Manson directed his followers to murder actress Sharon Tate, who was pregnant at the time, and 4 others at her home. The next night, they killed Leno and Rosemary LaBianca. These brutal murders shocked the nation. Manson and several of his followers were convicted of multiple murders. He spent the rest of his life in prison, dying in 2017. His influence over his followers and his charisma remain subjects of fascination and horror. Adolf Hitler. As the Führer of Nazi Germany, Hitler initiated World War II by invading Poland in 1939, leading to a global conflict that lasted 6 years and claimed over 60 million lives. Hitler was the architect of the Holocaust, a systematic genocide in which 6 million Jews, along with millions of others, such as Roma, Disabled individuals, political opponents, and homosexuals were exterminated in concentration camps. Hitler's oppressive regime came to an end in 1945 when he committed suicide in his bunker as Allied forces closed in on Berlin. His legacy of atrocities left Europe in ruins and forever changed the course of history. Osama bin Laden was the mastermind behind the September 11, 2001 attacks on the US, where terrorists hijacked 4 planes, crashing 2 into the World Trade Center, 1 into the Pentagon, and 1 in Pennsylvania. The attacks killed nearly 3,000 people. Bin Laden's al-Qaeda network was responsible for numerous terrorist attacks around the world. His radical Islamist ideology inspired jihadist movements globally, resulting in widespread conflict and violence. After years of evading capture, bin Laden was found and killed by US Navy SEALs in a raid on his compound in Pakistan in 2011. Joseph Stalin. As the Soviet leader from the 1920s to 1953, Stalin transformed the USSR into a global superpower through industrialization, but at the cost of millions of lives. His regime was marked by purges, forced labor camps, gulags, and severe repression. Stalin's paranoid purge of political rivals, intellectuals, and military leaders led to the execution or imprisonment of millions. In addition, he orchestrated famines such as the Holodomor, which led to the starvation of millions in Ukraine.